Imagine for a moment that someone handed you a set of instructions. No explanation, just a few simple steps. At exactly 4:30, be at a specific location. At 6:30, swallow 2 capsules. After they take effect, put on a pair of homemade lead masks. Then, wait for the signal. Would you do it? Would you trust that whoever wrote these instructions knew what they were talking about? Or would you stop and ask the one question that might save your life? What exactly am I waiting for? On August 20th, 1966, 2 electrical technicians traveled to a quiet hill overlooking the Brazilian city of Niterói. They followed a plan that only they seemed to understand. Hours later, they were found dead. There were no signs of violence, no obvious cause of death, only the cryptic instructions in a notebook, an empty water bottle, and crude lead masks resting over their eyes. Nearly 60 years later, investigators still cannot say with certainty what those men believed was about to happen on that lonely hillside. Were they victims of an elaborate con? Participants in a dangerous spiritual experiment? Or were they waiting for a signal that, according to some, never came from this world? Tonight, we're traveling to Brazil to examine one of the strangest unsolved deaths ever investigated. So as always, dim the lights, pour yourself some brew, take that first slow sip, and join us as we dive into the case of the lead masks of Vintém Hill.
So after reading that, what do you think about that? What do you think you're
I
in for?
actually vaguely remember this story.
Really? Okay.
Because I forgot where I saw it. It might have been on TV years ago when I was a kid, or maybe on the early days of YouTube. But I distinctly remember the setting of 2 guys, capsules they took, and then like found dead with a set like a paper, like a mysterious piece of paper,
Yep.
like with instructions.
Okay.
And that's kind of all I remember. Like, I think the part that jogged my memory was the electrical technicians.
I'm happy to hear that you've actually heard about this, because honestly, I never heard about this before, and
I vaguely remember this one. Yeah.
And most people I've kind of talked about don't seem to know anything about this. So I'm hoping for like viewers and stuff, this will be pretty new. I mean, I think if you're pretty like, you're kind of dipping your toes into the spooky stuff, like all this kind of stuff, this should probably be pretty new to you. However, if you're like a seasoned veteran, if you're a seasoned veteran, you're watching us, that's amazing, by the way. But if you're a seasoned veteran, you might have heard about this story. But we hope that you learned something new during this.
Question for the audience. This is audience engagement real quick. What time do you normally have dinner? And let me know where you're from roughly in the world. Are you from the Eastern United States, the Western United States, Europe? Are you from Latin America? Are you from South America? Well, I guess it's the same area, right? Latin America, South America. It's South and Central America. Are you from Canada? Are you from Asia, Africa? Let us know what time you have dinner, because that is a point of contention amongst this channel here.
Let's just leave it at it directly affected our schedule,
and it affects it every time, and some people listen and some people don't, because some people still don't know what other time people are having dinner, but that's fine.
Drop it in the comments below.
Drop it in the comments, please. Let me know. We need to know. For my own sanity, I need to know.
I'll toss a poll.
We're gonna do a poll.
We'll do a poll.
Do a poll.
Okay. People are gonna look at that and be like, what the hell does that have to do with this?
What is
I think we should start the story up.
Okay.
I'm excited. I've actually been very excited for the story.
Okay, good.
Alrighty. Starting in Brazil. On August 20th, 1966, a young boy was flying his kite on a hillside in the town of Niterói, a rough industrial town that sat just 17 kilometers away from Rio de Janeiro, located just across the Guanabara Bay. The hillside in question was named Vintém Hill, and because of its close proximity to the nearby bay, it was not only providing a cool breeze to alleviate what had become quite a sweltering day, but also provided the lift needed for the boy's kite to take to the skies. At some point during the boy's frolic, he noticed an anomaly in some of the tall grass on the opposite side of the hill that he'd been playing on. Intrigued, the boy decided to scamper over to the oddity to investigate what appeared to be a black blob. As the boy drew closer to the strange object, he began to realize that what he was looking at was just a pile of black clothing. Assuming that they likely had been left by a couple of picnickers who had simply forgotten their jackets, he continued to walk towards the pile. However, as he got closer, the boy's nostrils were smacked with a pungent and offensive odor. Then he saw what was emitting the horrible smell. Inside the pile of clothing was the decomposing remains of two adult men. Horrified at the sight of the grotesque image, the boy ran all the way from Vintém Hill into town and ultimately to his parents' house. When he burst through the door, he was covered in sweat and looked like he had seen a ghost. As you can imagine, the boy began to speak quite quickly through labored breath, which in turn likely made his story all the more believable. His father then proceeded to immediately alert the authorities. You ever stumble upon a dead body? No, me either. Just checking. Ultimately, because it was already dusk and becoming quite dark outside, the police stated that they would not be able to go to Vintém Hill until the following morning. In the early hours of the 21st of August, several officers ventured through the brush and up the side of Vintém Hill to see what the boy had been going on about. When they arrived, they were greeted by the unpleasant sight and smells of dead men rotting. Just as had been reported, the two bodies lay next to each other in a small depression partially covered by overgrown grass. Each corpse was dressed in a black suit, wore a raincoat, and most notably, adorned a small lead mask over their eyes. The masks themselves had been rough cut from a plate of sheet metal. Weirdly, despite clearly being created to serve as a mask, neither mask had any straps to secure them to the user's face. In addition to the weird attire donned by the deceased men, was also the presence of a number of other interesting items. This included a single water bottle, as well as a package with towels inside of it that sat beside the bodies. When the pockets of the suits and raincoats were sifted through, authorities discovered receipts for the raincoats, a list of alphanumerical codes, and most notably, no pun intended, a notebook. Within the notebook was a single note that read, 1630, be at the specified location. 1830, ingest capsules. After the effect, protect metals, await signal mask. As you can likely imagine, authorities were left quite perplexed with the situation that they were all witnessing. So good on the boy, though, for reporting it, I guess. You know, he could easily just kind of shove that deep down into the recesses of his brain and never think about it again, or at least try never to think about it again.
Honestly, if I was in that situation as a child, that might be what I would have done, dude. It might have just traumatized me for life.
I think I might have, depending on what it is, and some information we get later, I don't want to spoil anything, knowing what the situation may have been, I might have just kept my mouth shut and just been like, you know what? Not my business.
Shortly after the men were discovered on Vintém Hill, their bodies were identified. According to reports, they belonged to a Manuel Pereira da Cruz and a Miguel Jose Viana. Both had been electrical technicians from a small town called Campos dos Goytacases, which was located roughly 170 miles northwest from where their bodies were found. After examining the scene, investigators observed and noted that there appeared to be no signs of a struggle. No strange marks or obvious wounds were visible on their bodies. However, authorities did find it odd that no valuables and very little money were found on or near the deceased. After the initial scene was documented and cleaned up, the corpses were then transported to the coroner's office for autopsy. Unfortunately, police would not be getting anything noteworthy from the coroner, as they were currently booked up. As a result, the bodies would not be examined for another couple of weeks. By that time, the internal organs of the men would be decomposed to the point that no concrete evidence could be extracted from the procedure. This left the police with little to go off of. Left with little other options, authorities then turned their attention to trying to understand the movements and motivations of the men in their final moments. Specifically, they wanted to understand why two men from a small town 130 miles away had traveled to a remote hillside, only to die with a thin sheet of metal on their faces. They then attempted to retrace the men's steps to figure out exactly how it had all gone so wrong. Police would go on to speak with numerous witnesses throughout the city of Niterói. After looking at various records, they were able to determine that the men had arrived in the city via bus on the 17th of August. Specifically, this information was discovered after acquiring and viewing the men's business accounts. Both of these individuals owned and operated a small electronics company. Also discovered during this search was the fact that the men had made a single withdrawal of 3 million cruzeros, about 13,400 in today's money, right before they boarded the bus. While nobody was able to provide definitive information as to what this money would have been used for, many people speculated that they had been in the market for some electronics equipment for their business. After delving a bit more into the bus records, investigators were able to learn that the bus the men had taken into the city had arrived at approximately 2:30 p.m. After analyzing the receipts that had been found around the raincoats, they were able to piece together that the men had gone directly to a local shop to purchase the coats after disembarking from the bus. From there, they proceeded to go to a local bar. After discovering this information, police went to the bar in question and began to interview employees who had worked the day that the men had arrived in Niterói. According to the bartender who had served the men, the only order that was placed was for a single bottle of water. After receiving the water, the men proceeded to stick around for quite a bit, but not without displaying some eccentric behavior. According to accounts, both men seemed extremely agitated, especially Viana. Apparently, Viana wouldn't stop shifting and continuously kept looking over his shoulder towards the front door. Additionally, he would regularly check his watch over and over, almost as if they were waiting for somebody or something to come through the door at any given moment. The last time anybody would ever see them alive was immediately after they left the bar. According to various witnesses, a Jeep Wrangler with two unknown men pulled up alongside the curb next to Viana and De Cruz and invited them into the vehicle. From there, the vehicle traveled out of the city center to an unknown location. Most investigators speculate that the unknown location in question was Vintém Hill. I mean, I think they bought the water to maybe take those two pills, right? Because I can't take pills without a bottle of water.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I like your detective brain going on right now. So yeah, though I think you're right. The water would make sense for the capsules. Obviously, we're not entirely sure what the hell the capsules were at this moment in time. It is interesting that two men just rock up in a Jeep and basically say hop in. Like it kind, like at this moment in time with the information that we've read up to this point, obviously, and I'm have different opinions, but at this point, I'm thinking like, okay, is it maybe like a drug deal, like or the two capsules are they drugs? Drugs were rampant in Brazil at this time during this time. It was not exactly.
But what would be the point of two random pills and just two people taking like, how is that a drug deal?
I don't know. I mean, like, I obviously like something weird's going on with these people in the Jeep. So I'm trying to like connect their potential illicit activities to these two. And all we have to go off of at the moment is the two capsules. Like it's not like there was a gun found, next to the bodies or anything like that. So it wasn't like an arms deal. again, I'm only going off of the little information we have right now. This isn't actually what I think, but up to this point, if I was a detective, this is the information I have. This is where my mind would probably be going, because it's the most likely situation at this point. Doesn't mean the reason why, like, it's the easiest one, like, because at this point, yes, it's suspicious. In my opinion, the lead masks are probably the most suspicious part of what they have found, because that's just fucking weird. It's very bizarre. The other stuff can be somewhat explained away with certain things. Granted, we don't know what the capsules were, but these two men were the last to see them, presumably alive. So, what role did they play?
I don't know. How come no one knows what they look like? Were they real?
That's another thing. Were they real? Eyewitness testimony is actually notoriously wrong. Like, more times than not, it is completely wrong. I think I might have mentioned this actually during an episode of our long forgotten old podcast. But
which episode was it? Do you remember?
I do not remember. But I had a professor in college who basically we all came in to class that day, and all of a sudden
I remember this story. Sorry, go ahead.
All of a sudden him and a student started having a massive argument, and the student pushed him. Everybody gets up, everyone starts kind of running toward, like, break it up, and then the teacher just throws his hands up and says, "It was fake. Now immediately go and write down what you saw, and we're going to review." And after, there were people saying that the teacher started it, there were people saying the student started it, there was like some random person who thought like a third person was involved that wasn't there. It's like, it's just, eyewitness testimony is not typically good. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't take it into account by any means, but a lot of people, feel, oh, well, so-and-so saw it happen. They may have thought that's what they saw. I'm not saying they're a liar, but what they thought they saw might not be what they actually saw. That's why it's very dangerous to rely heavily on just eyewitness testimony. People have been falsely incarcerated over eyewitness testimony. So just always important to really think about what you think you saw and try to find like blind spots in what you're looking at. As if the information gleaned from various witnesses around Niterói wasn't peculiar enough, investigators were left even more confused when they began to get into contact with people who were close to the men. As it turned out, yes, both men had indeed been electrical technicians. However, that was far from being the full story. According to a source named Elcio Gomez, who happened to be the men's assistant, the men were part of a group of individuals who considered themselves to be spiritual scientists. In essence, these are practitioners who approach inner development, consciousness, and the soul with the systematic rigor of a scientist, in this case, via the use of technology. Gomez claimed that the men had experienced a falling out of sorts shortly before they were found dead on Vintém Hill. Ooh. It's never a good sign when you have a falling out with someone immediately before they die. just saying, for a multitude of reasons.
Well, who had the falling out? Was it Gomez and these two individuals, or was it the two individuals themselves between each other?
Gomez had the falling out with both men shortly before they died.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
That's never a good thing. First of all, guilt. That's always terrible. Secondly,
what does it mean to be a spiritual scientist? Are these guys like the look maxers that are injecting themselves with gold, or like to live forever?
Technically, I guess that could be well, I guess not. So
let me see your best look maxer. That's not bad. That's not bad.
So a spiritual scientist, from what I was able to gather from loosely researching, they're basically people who approach religion with the scientific method.
I like that.
So I do too. I think that's great. I will say the little caveat here is, which we're about to get into more, this appears to be leaning much more towards, this specific sect appears to be leaning much more towards something resembling Scientology, almost.
I still don't fully understand Scientology, but it is something I want to study a little bit more in depth because I think it is fascinating. Also, I mean, hell, Tom Cruise is a part of it, right? Who doesn't want to watch something Tom Cruise is in?
Fair enough. I might actually circle back to the similarities here in a moment, but
Please
just
do.
put a
Sir.
pin in that, please, and don't let me forget. Viewers, don't let me forget. Let's see. Gomez explained that while the men had technically been part of the spiritual scientist group, they had seemingly taken a different approach to the belief system. Allegedly, De Cruz and Viana had a sect within the group that served as a secret society of sorts. Gomez claimed to have not known the subsect's intentions, but claimed that they seemed very interested in the idea of communicating with extraterrestrials. Allegedly, the two men were quite deep into studying anything that dealt with the subject. Notably, there are supposedly notes written by the men that refer to masks, intense luminosity, and accompanying spirits. It should be noted that this is presumed to be speculation. During an interview with police, one of which more likely resembled an interrogation, Gomez explained that in the years leading up to their mysterious deaths, the men had involved him in a series of odd experiments that he did not quite understand. One thing he did know, however, was the fact that De Cruz and Viana were very secretive about these exploits, even to the point of keeping their own families in the dark. The vast majority of these experiments would take place over the summer of 1966. In one instance, the three were in De Cruz's backyard when a device that the men had been working on exploded. When Gomez inquired, the men refused to tell him exactly what they were working on. This, however, was nothing compared to what would occur afterwards. In June of 1966, the three men would travel to Otafona Beach, which was located just 25 miles away. Interestingly, Viana's own sister would be able to corroborate the story, as she claimed that her brother had told her that they would soon be carrying out an important mission before leaving for the day. Eerily, this is something that he would also say right before he left for Niterói. Gomez claimed that while on the beach, a bright orange object descended from the sky and actually landed on the beach. For 5 minutes, it rested on the sand without making any noise. Then, almost as soon as it had arrived, it then began to ascend and fly over the ocean. Shockingly, the object then proceeded to explode in the sky, littering the ocean with debris.
Where did they find this guy again?
He was the assistant, and he was, well, we're gonna learn that. We're gonna learn that.
Yeah, I don't know what he's smoking.
Yeah, it's something good. While this story does sound far-fetched, no shit, it actually can be backed up by some fishermen who were supposedly in the area at the time of the explosion. According to them, they did actually see a glowing object in the sky at the time. Remember what I said about eyewitness testimony, everybody? So just I was
gonna say source, dude.
So yeah, this is taking a really bizarre turn. Like all of a sudden, there's objects blowing up the sky. Like basically, what he's saying is, I mean, the way I interpreted it was a UAP landed on the frickin' beachhead, stuck around for 5 minutes, then decided, okay, nice seeing you guys, I'm gonna leave, and then promptly explodes. Like, what? Like, it's just, that's bizarre. But you know what? It's so, that last detail of it exploding is just weird enough to almost make you wonder, was there something to it? Because it would be easy to be, yeah, it landed for 5 minutes and then it flew off. Aliens visited us, they left. Okay. But it exploded. That's such a weird detail to add. And yes, I know I just got done talking about how you should be careful with eyewitness testimony. But the fishermen at least claim they saw something glow in the sky. However, it's important to note they did not mention anything exploding in the sky. And I feel if something blew up in the sky, that would probably be like what you would lead with. You know what I mean? That's interesting. So there's an explosion in the sky. Not, well, there's a glowing object in the sky. Oh, I forgot. It blew up too. Like, that's just weird. So, yeah, I don't know. But bizarre. Either way, LCO is an interesting guy. I'll say that much. So, with that all said, don't worry. There's much more information that's going to be revealed during these theories, but it is now an appropriate time to start theorizing what the hell just happened.
Theory number 1. The men died from an accidental drug overdose. This theory is very short and not so sweet. It is entirely possible that the men had been under the influence of dangerous and illicit drugs. At this time, during Brazil's history, drugs were rampant and were being sold all throughout the country. One of the biggest issues at the time was the fact that many of these drugs were being created with too high of a dosage or with exceedingly dangerous filler chemicals. As a result, accidental overdoses were quite common and many people would die during this time period. Because both men passed away at roughly the same time, it is possible that the capsules in question had too high of a dosage and resulted in the men going into cardiac arrest at the same time. It should be noted that this theory is attractive to some simply because it is the most grounded of all the theories. The problem with this theory, however, is that it definitely does not cover all the weird things about this case. Theory 1.5. The men died from a drug overdose because they were in a cult. Similar to the last theory, this theory stipulates that the men died from an overdose. However, in this scenario, they did so because of their affiliation with a cult. You ever wonder where the term "don't drink the Kool-Aid" comes from? It was from a cult. As we have discussed throughout this story, the men were a part of a spiritual scientist group that may have been obsessed with making contact with aliens. Not much was known about the organization, but many claimed that this was ultimately their goal. Could it be possible that these individuals believed that the capsules mentioned within the men's notes had special capabilities to allow them to communicate with extraterrestrials? If so, then maybe the capsules in question were in fact laced with something dangerous like arsenic or a similar poison. Something worth mentioning that gives this story more credence is the fact that many witnesses would later claim that Gomez had actually lied about how involved he was with this group. According to various sources, Gomez was actually the individual who recruited both men into the organization and was allegedly deeply involved in the group's theological practices. Could Gomez have been the one to push the men towards the events that would eventually culminate with their final moments being spent on Vintém Hill? One interesting thing to consider is the fact that 30 years later, a very infamous group who may have had similar beliefs did go on to commit mass suicide on March 26, 1997. They were called Heaven's Gate, and they believed that advanced extraterrestrial beings represented the true God and that a higher kingdom of heaven existed in outer space. Furthermore, they also believed that by intentionally dying, their souls would be liberated to board the alien spacecraft and ascend to a higher level of existence. This eventually culminated with 39 members in Rancho Santa Fe, California, ingesting a lethal mixture of phenobarbital and vodka as the Halley-Bopp comet approached Earth. All 39 members, including their leader, Marshall Applewhite, died.
I'm going to be honest, like, I know I love to believe aliens and stuff like that, and we have plenty of our theories coming. This is where my mind actually went when, like,
You think it's a cult?
capsule. Yeah, because you, even like in the introduction, you asked us the question, if someone offered you capsules and said, take these caps at this time, do this and this and this, would you? Rational
No.
people wouldn't do it. You know who would? Somebody in a cult. You're going to do whatever you're told because you have been indoctrinated into this cult and you are going to believe everything that they say, especially if it's a cult that is trying to tell you how to ascend.
You want to go to heaven, don't you?
Yeah, you want to go to heaven? You're going to take these 2 pills. Here's your
right
bottle of
now.
water. But yeah, no, it's I really do think a cult being present would explain like 95% of this. I really do. But that is not to say there aren't other plausible theories out there. But I think this is honestly the most simple one, and sometimes the most simple one is the one. But how about theory number 2?
Tell me about it.
Theory number 2. They were a part of the resistance.
La resistance.
One interesting claim that Gomez made was the fact that both men had engaged in extremely secretive experiments, many of which resulted in explosions. Because of the nature of these tests, many individuals have hypothesized that the men were not actually trying to contact extraterrestrials, but rather create weapons. Create weapons for what, I hear you ask? Well, for the resistance, of course. To say that Brazil was in the midst of political turmoil at this time would be putting it quite lightly. Only 2 years ago, the president of Brazil had been overthrown amidst a coup that ultimately led to a completely different political landscape. For context, this coup was supported by a variety of groups and governments, including the United States government. At the time, Brazil's government was viewed as becoming just a bit too left-leaning. Because of this, various entities felt that it was time to liberate the people of Brazil from the dastardly clutches of communism. As a result of this insurrection, people who viewed the former administration positively were forced to go underground. Because of the spiritual scientists' beliefs, people have speculated that they may have sympathized with these individuals. If they supported their cause enough, it is possible that they were attempting to help arm a growing resistance movement with various kinds of explosives, or at the very least, source electronic components for the production of these weapons. What provides a little more stability to
Does
this
Brazil
theory-
have weapons of mass destruction?
God, don't say that. don't say that, Brazil. God. Oh no. I won't go too much on that, but price. No.
Interesting.
Unfortunately, without getting too much into it, because
They're sitting on how much oil?
I know. Does Brazil have a lot of oil?
I don't know.
What provides a little more stability to this theory is the fact that investigators did determine that the list of alphanumeric codes mentioned earlier did in fact correlate to part numbers for various electronic components. This would explain both the amount of cash that they withdrew, as well as the notes that contained various codes. Also, witnesses who saw the men in the Jeep tended to side with the notion that the men did not look Brazilian, meaning that they may have been from out of the country. Is it possible that these men were looking to purchase this equipment? And is it possible that the deal went bad and it resulted in their deaths? To piggyback off of this theory, kind of a deal gone wrong, which I have promptly named Theory 2.5, which is they were targeted and robbed. While this next theory definitely can be tied to the last one, this one is distinct as it maintains that the men were targeted after they arrived in the city and that they were not actually in Niterói for the purpose of purchasing illegal goods. What kicked this theory into motion was actually a result of something that happened 3 years after the men's deaths. In 1969, fantastic year, a newspaper ran a story. It just is. Summer of 69. It's a great song. Get your head out of the gutter.
Is that all?
That's all, yeah.
Just because of that one song by Rick Springsteen?
A man can't like a song about his country.
The summer of 69.
Wow, that was beautiful. It's my ringtone. I'm bringing that back. In 1969, a newspaper ran a story about a man named Hamilton Bazzani who had apparently confessed to being involved in the now infamous lead masks case. Allegedly, he had confided in a friend who had visited him in prison that he was involved in their murders. She then immediately went and reported the confession to authorities. Snitches get stitches. According to his account, it all started back on August 17th, 1966, the day that the men had perished. During this time, Bazzani was wanted by police for illegal smuggling and was hiding out in Rio de Janeiro. At some point during the day, 3 individuals who Bazzani knew loosely approached him with a job offer. The score in question would be 2 men who were currently at a local spiritualist center who happened to have a boatload of cash on their persons. According to the schemers, they had an inside person who had tipped them off. The 3 criminals then ventured to the spiritual center and then proceeded to engage in a confidence con, that's actually a thing, I had to look it up, against both De Cruz and Viana. If you're wondering what a confidence con is, it's basically just duping someone into trusting you.
So what you do to me.
It's been working for years.
It has. I'm still skeptical of you, though, so when you betray me, I won't be surprised.
They spent time with them during their retreat, and even apparently engaged in a seance with the men. After some talking and getting to know one another, the con artists were able to gain the men's trust and offer them some assistance with their alien communication endeavor. While Bazzani claims that he did not know the nature of exactly what the men were promised, Bazzani recollects that everybody, including the woman who owned the center, drove to Vintém Hill in a jeep. Bazzani was instructed by his companions to stay in the car with the owner, while everyone else marched up the hill. Later, the criminals would return with the money, but not De Cruz or Viana. When asked about the men's absence, the con artist simply and coldly stated that they forced the 2 out-of-towners to ingest poison while they held them at gunpoint. After this, the 2 men had simply been left to die. While this story does honestly seem quite plausible, it is important to note that investigators familiar with the case do not buy into this confession.
Interesting.
The reason for this is that a lot of the story doesn't really line up. This includes the fact that Bazzani was essentially invited to work the job with no effort and was still able to collect the money. Additionally, why on earth would they bring the owner of a spiritualist center with them to do the job? Finally, why would the criminals have poisoned the men when they could have just shot them? Vintém Hill was already known for criminal activity, and the police were very hesitant to investigate at night. This also explains why it took them until the following morning for investigators to actually go and find the bodies, because it's widely believed that the police were actually too scared to go to Vintém Hill at night. For the most part,
gang violence or what?
Yeah, it's a known hotspot for drug dealings and all kinds of illicit activities at night. So the police and law enforcement, or anybody for that matter, just kind of tended to stay out of the way because it's a good way to die. So, to finish off his theory, for the most part, authorities simply think that Bazzani simply wanted to be involved with the hope that he could be brought to a different prison that was significantly easier to escape from. He wanted to basically perform a escape from Dannemora situation, which we never actually talked about that, even though me and you, I mean, I still live here.
Well, I mean, it's not really paranormal or conspiracy.
Maybe we talk about Alcatraz.
Yeah, we could do Alcatraz. Whether or not they lived. I think they did.
I think so too. Spoilers. Okay, so what do you think about that theory? I agree that it is plausible.
I feel like that one makes the most sense. That they basically got betrayed.
Interesting.
Confidence con?
Confidence con. Yeah. I had to look that up, but I like it. That's an interesting way to phrase it. I mean, yeah, don't be wrong. Like investigators said, it does kind of, there are some, I don't even want to call them holes, but they're some kind of odd aspects.
Why would they poison them instead of shooting them? It makes sense because there's no bullet trail, right? You can trace a bullet back to a gun. You can't trace a pill that you make them ingest.
It's true, but they also left them with notes that they were taking. Now, maybe they didn't know that the men were taking notes. That's possible. But if you're going to rob someone, wouldn't you just take all their stuff. Also, forgot to mention this. There was still some money left over. Not much, very little, but there was still some money. Now, maybe the money was hidden. Maybe I know
Maybe.
it's very common. I don't know if it was common in the '60s, but I do know a lot of areas where people are afraid to get robbed. They wear like money belts. So that wasn't.
Yeah, I remember that happened to me at the airport. Some guy was going back to Mexico. He had a money belt.
Yeah, it's common. It's a normal thing. I don't know if it was common back then, but there still was stuff that they probably would have wanted to steal. Also, like I said, the notes were left there. I don't know. I mean, I guess they're just criminals, so maybe it's just an overlook. And also, maybe they're like, I don't have to try very hard because the police aren't going to find us anyways. I don't know. It was the '60s in Brazil. I don't know what that was really like, but I'm sure it's a lot different than it is today. So maybe they were just looking for a quick score. Although I wonder if maybe the owner of the spiritual center. So it is widely believed in this scenario that the owner of the spiritual center was the insider who tipped the men off about these men with the money being at her center. But it's interesting that she decided to go with them. Maybe, I mean, if she tipped them off, maybe she was romantically involved with one of the criminals, because it's a weird thing to tip off, especially if you're like a business owner. It can't be good business to be like getting your clients killed. But I don't know. I don't know these people. I know nothing about these people other than what we just have read. So, but I do find it interesting though that am I correct in saying that you lean more towards this one than the previous one?
Yeah, that it was just like what they overdosed in a cult.
A cult, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm on the cult train, and you're on they were robbed train.
Yeah.
Well, there is still
Narco crime is a thing in Latin America.
Mm-hmm. Still is.
Theory number 3. They actually made contact. Finally, we have the theory that you've all been waiting for. It was aliens. As you have probably theorized for yourself, there are many aspects to this case that lead to the possible presence of extraterrestrial contact occurring on Vintém Hill. And before we get to that, there is one thing that occurred that we have yet to mention. There were plenty of witnesses to something weird happening the night of August 17th, 1966. Apparently, there were dozens of reports of weird activity occurring on Vintém Hill the night that both men passed. Of these reports, one stands out among the rest. This one came from a highly respected and wealthy member of the Rio community. Her name was Gracinda de Sousa. According to Sousa, she was driving along a stretch of road that was close to Vintém Hill just as it was getting dark out. In the back seat, she had her children, and they were all on their way home. However, something caught her eye that caused her to pull over and get out of her car. What she saw shocked her. Above Vintém Hill, Sousa could see a bright, luminescent light that appeared to be shooting off in all kinds of directions. Apparently, the light emitted from an ovular object that appeared to have a band of fire around the edges. The object in question was rising up into the sky and descending towards the top of the hill repeatedly for over 4 minutes. Finally, after snapping out of her transfixed gaze, she drove home as fast as she could to tell her husband. Upon receiving this news, the couple then decided to drive back and see what was going on. Unfortunately, by the time they returned, the object and lights were gone, and all that was left was the dark silhouette of Vintém Hill. Despite this, the couple did report the event to local authorities, as did many other onlookers who had witnessed the strange phenomenon that night. Getting back to Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana, remember that Elcio claimed the two men had not only charted their own paths in terms of being spiritual scientists, but also claimed to have wanted to make contact with extraterrestrials. They supposedly had been working quite diligently in order to communicate with these entities. What if they were actually onto something and succeeded? How about we take another look at that cryptic note that was left beside the bodies? Only this time, how about we add some punctuation? 1630, be at the specified location. 1830. Ingest capsules. After the effect, protect metals. Await signal, mask. When we look at it like this, it seems at least a bit more straightforward. It's true, because I read it previously, I'm like, did Austin just skip punctuation or?
Yeah, it was it is as weird as it looks. No commas, no periods, no nothing, just words on a paper.
Obviously. The first part alludes to being at Vintém Hill at 4:30. The second part refers to consuming capsules, which may or may not have been hallucinogenic or even poison. From then on, it does get a little bit more confusing, but there is some room to speculate here. After it says, after the effect, likely referring to the capsule's effect, it discusses protecting metals. Could this be what the towels were for? Maybe the towels were to protect jewelry or watches or anything that was deemed valuable, even though none of those items were ever found. Finally, await signal and mask could be referring to what the men actually hoped would come. Specifically, the signal in question could be a sign from said extraterrestrials that they were on their way and that it was time to prepare. By prepare, we are referring to the bright lights that people reported seeing. Since the homemade masks didn't feature any straps to hold them in place, it is likely that all they would have done was hold the masks in front of their eyes until the lights ceased, or after they boarded the ship. As to why their bodies were found on top of Vintém Hill and not taken into the UFO, there have been two prominent theories put forth. The first, a mistake occurred and the men were accidentally killed during their encounter. The second, the men were given instructions on how to ascend into a realm of infinite knowledge. As a result, their bodies were left behind while their minds ascended. What do you believe?
Well, first of all, because we haven't talked about this theory yet in detail. I do think it's interesting that many people, including a very reputable citizen of the city, claim to
Who
have
was the
seen
reputable
something.
citizen? Hold on. Doesn't even say, right?
It was Griselda de Sousa.
Oh yeah, Griselda de Sousa.
So Jesus, Griselda de Sousa was very prominent in the city.
Just because she had money?
Yeah, she was a socialite. She had lots of money. Her husband had lots of money, and they had a reputation to uphold. And the fact that even they were like, we saw something on Vintém Hill that night, that is strange. Lots of people saw something that night, and they reported it before the reports ever came in about these two dead men on the hill. So all the reports about the lights being seen on the hill predated actually discovering the bodies. So that's interesting. That is something. What could have emitted a bright light like that, and why would it? I mean, could it have been thunder? Could they? I don't know. I mean, like maybe they were struck by lightning. I don't know. Like, I mean, I feel though if you get struck by lightning, you look like you got struck by lightning, whatever that looks like. I'm just tossing theories out there. I'm going to be honest. This is not the theory, believe it or not, that I actually am leaning towards. I'm still on my cult kick. And one thing I kind of wanted to circle back and ask you about, because I forgot to mention it, maybe you've changed it, but last I checked with you, you were leaning more towards they were robbed. What about the masks?
What about the masks?
What would those have to do with the robbery? I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying, do you have a theory for why those would be present during a robbery?
Well, no, because with the robbery theory, they were still like occultists or whatever that were expecting to do something. It's just that they were betrayed by the people they hired.
Okay.
So maybe the masks were something that they brought and something that they had planned to use, and maybe even offered it to the other two and gave them a mask. But then they're just like, yeah, sure, and they pocketed it, and then they robbed them and killed them.
Okay, fair enough. That's good. That's solid. I guess kind of circling back to the alien theory. It sucks.
I guess I kind of believe a little bit of alien theory and robbery, right?
Okay.
Because maybe they were occultists that believed aliens were trying to communicate with them. They basically thought this object on the beach or wherever it was, Vintém Hill, that like had been like the thing that exploded in the sky that LCO said. Maybe they thought that was an alien, whatever it is. Who knows? And they hired people to help them out, get them to Vintém Hill
Mhm.
to see what was going on, and then in said chaos, they were mugged. Most likely, all their valuables were taken. Well, not all of them, but most of their valuables were taken. And perhaps for the pills, either it was a way to leave no trail with guns, or they were still planning to basically go down the mass sewer slide
Could be.
to
Could be.
reach the aliens, and they just did it anyways.
One thing I also wonder too, which I don't know if I want to propose this because it's unfair because I did not look up if the notes were actually in their handwriting, like if that was like confirmed. But what
Mhm.
if the robbers wrote up a note to make them look like a bunch of weird, like, because if let's just say that
True.
they met him at the
It's
spiritual
true.
center. Like, okay, these people are weird. Let's just write up something, make it look like they killed themselves. And maybe I don't know. Unfortunately, the only thing I will say about this is all three theories. I think there's pieces of every theory where there's still a mystery involved. And also there's a piece of every theory that solves certain parts, but not
But leaves
everything.
others unanswered.
Yeah, I
Yep.
don't think any theory solves everything, at least as is. There's a missing component to one of these theories that we don't know, and that I think would solve it. But unfortunately, I really don't think any of these theories fully explain what happened. Um, but I think there might be truth to each one, in my opinion. I
Two
know, I
truths
know
in a
that's pretty
lie.
fence sitting. I understand, but it's just there's
You always
so.
sit on the fence, though. I expect it of you.
I'm the voice of reason in this relationship.
Fair.
I'm surprised you agree with me.
No, sometimes my takes are a little crazy.
All right, you ready for me to put a bow on this? Get this over with and done.
Yes, sir.
All right, you sure?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Whatever you say goes, sir.
All right. I do want you to pay extra careful attention to the end of this conclusion. Okay. More than half a century has passed since Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana climbed the slopes of Vintém Hill. And yet, questions remain. Were they victims of a cruel deception? Men whose search for knowledge and enlightenment led them into the hands of someone with far darker intentions. Were they conducting an experiment that went catastrophically wrong? Or did they truly believe they were about to witness something extraordinary? The evidence offers no clear answers. The cryptic note, the missing money, the unidentified capsules, the strange lead masks. Each clue seems to point in a different direction, leaving investigators trapped in a maze of possibilities with no obvious exit. Perhaps the truth was lost when the bodies were left exposed to the elements for too long. Perhaps a crucial piece of evidence was overlooked. Or perhaps the answer is sitting somewhere in an old forgotten file, waiting to be rediscovered. Whatever happened on that hill in August of 1966, it left behind one of the most baffling mysteries in Brazilian history. And maybe that's why the case continues to fascinate us. Because deep down, we want to believe that every mystery has a solution, that every question has an answer. But some stories seem determined to resist explanation. Some stories leave behind only fragments. And the lead masks of Vintém Hill may be one of them. But before we close this case, and before you have made up your mind about what happened to those two spiritual scientists, there is one final detail that I would like to share with you. This wasn't the first time something like this happened in Brazil. You see, 4 years before Cruz and Viana were ever found on Vintém Hill, authorities discovered the body of another electronics technician named Hermes Luiz Feitosa on top of a different hill nearly 160 miles away from Niterói. As it so happens, he too had been known to be a spiritual scientist, only his focus was on psychic abilities. Just like the men on Vintém Hill, there was no apparent cause of death, no signs of physical struggle, and no clear trauma. Oh yeah, and there's also just one more similarity. When the police arrived at the scene and scaled that tall, lonely hill, they found something a bit peculiar. Lying beside Fetosa's lifeless body was a crudely cut lead mask. So this is not the first time this has happened.
You think they would start the investigation with that?
You would think.
You would think you would start the.
To be fair, though, okay, criminal justice as like a practice in terms of creating connections and linking cases together and understanding things and having a full yes, with the exception of how problematic criminal justice can be. It is amazing how connected it is these days. In fact, it's kind of scary, and it leads to a lot of privacy issues with Big Brother and stuff like that. But Interpol, Interpol's a massive organization working across tons of countries, connecting all kinds of law enforcement agencies from all said countries. This was not a thing back then. Yes, I believe there were, international police, stuff like that, but they did not have the connections that they have today. So it's entirely possible that it took a bit for someone to kind of raise their hand and be like, this has happened before. They may not have known about it when they started. But that, I will say, really throws a wrench in everything. And it doesn't really seem to help with any of the theories. It just makes it more murky. Because
gives it more questions.
More questions. And depending, what theory you subscribe to, you can use this to help substantiate your claim to that theory. Again, I'm on the cult train. I think it was a cult. I think these people were told to do something. They just went and did it, and they died. If it was a cult, this would be an our cult member. In your case, if it was a robbery, obviously, I'm not suggesting, there's robbing people with metal masks on their face. Maybe these spiritual scientists were known throughout various communities as being kind of gullible, easy targets. Maybe it worked for one person and they never solved this one. Maybe the same person did it. Maybe they created a lifelong...
Maybe it is gang violence.
It could be. Who knows? It could be. They could have started a lifelong criminal career of just kind of going after these people because it worked once. Why not try it again? Who knows, really? But it is insane to me that there was another case like that. And I think this might be the first case we ended that yes, I have one I'm leaning towards, but I don't know. I am not convinced on any of these.
So what are you leaning towards?
Well, I'm leaning towards the cult thing, but that doesn't mean I'm fully 100% in on with that.
I'm double dipping my toes into cult robbery gone wrong. Well, now that you mentioned the third, I think I'm gonna go from cult to serial killer.
Okay, new theory.
Yeah,
new theory.
Someone just took advantage of these gullible guys and killed them. I don't know.
It could be. I
don't know.
It's a tough one, and honestly, I think this is one I might kind of think back to throughout the years, just kind of what happened to these people, because it is fascinating. You asked me how I stumbled upon this story, and I told you I wanted a story like the Japanese SOS incident, which is a great story. And if you haven't checked out that video, I strongly recommend it. I will
the link in the description.
I'll put the link here somewhere at the end, probably.
Somewhere. I'm pointing to it somewhere.
But the truth is, this one is not like the SOS incident, because at the SOS incident, I was pretty convinced that I felt like I knew what happened. I'm not going to say it right now. I kind of want to spoil it for anybody. This one, I don't know. I just don't know. And that's my answer. I don't know. Leave your what you think happened down in the comments.
Your conspiracies and your ideas of what you think happened in this story, whether it's one of the four, how many did we get? 4 or 5 theories? 5 theories?
Yeah, roughly.
Technically 4 if you want to count them as halves, because we did say 1.5, 2.5. Tell us what you think happened in this case, and maybe your theory is completely different than what we came up with. Could be. Also, let me know what time you eat dinner. That's also very important.
Yeah, please do. Utilize the poll that I'll be adding, please. All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much for hanging out with us here on Morning Brew. As always, keep sipping the strange and stay spooky. Why not? It's a good motto to live by. So we'll see you later.